old-fashioned
For
style.
Ryan's presentation.
Okay,
anyway.
tell me when you have the Zoom ready.
Eric, did you need me to do something up here with this computer?
No, I just pop the Zoom back on.
Oh, just student representative.
Can't see.
All right, I will go ahead and call the meeting of the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee to order at 7:01 p.m. As always, we welcome public comment, and we will have a Zoom open momentarily for people to give comment over the Zoom or in person. When considering public comment, the strict policy is provided, but I want to remind everyone making comment that it's an opportunity for you to share thoughts. The committee will not respond, not because we don't care, but because it's a matter of equity. And if we get into a debate or a dialogue back and forth, it creates an inequitable response to other people. So anyone who comes to the microphone will have 3 minutes to make any comment they wish. Please start by stating your name and your address. When you have 30 seconds remaining, the superintendent will raise a hand and say that you have 30 seconds left in public comment, and at the conclusion of the 3 minutes, your time will be over. We ask that everyone sort of respects those rules, and we understand there's a lot of interest in making public comment. Before we begin to that, we'll start, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, are you ready? Okay, so the Zoom is open. We want to remind everyone also that this meeting is being recorded. It is also available on HWCam to either watch now or watch later. So with that, I will open the floor for citizen comment. We'll start with people in the room. If you'd like to make a comment, go ahead and just come to the microphone.
Hi, my name's Peter Shibley. I'm at 188 Main Street in Wenham. I'm the father of 4 kids in town, 1 senior left at the high school. I have 2 straightforward comments. One is, I'm asking in no uncertain terms on behalf of my family and dozens of others for the school committee to take immediate action to begin the process of removing the mandatory mask policy at the high school, and to set an action plan to follow at the middle and elementary school levels as soon as those schools make a state requirement. We are interested in seeing actual evidence that the committee is now looking at this fully from the perspective of the student and not just talking about that. And to allow these kids to return to their normal course of learning and interaction. You are all well aware this is now possible, and we are incredibly frustrated that no one is seemingly willing to take that first step on the committee. Second, I would like to state for the record, and for all in the room and for all of those on Zoom and for the committee, to my understanding, the school committee does not allow, by its own policy, for any two-way participation in any public setting between the committee and its constituents to voice concerns and enter any form of dialogue to discuss and induce potential catalysts for change. I find this policy to fly in the face of any form of democracy, and it has created an environment of frustration, distrust, and dissatisfaction with the committee from a very large group of parents and students in our community. We are not rising in the rankings here in the state. We are falling, and we're falling very quickly. I would encourage the committee to make some changes to the policy, listen to us, and put forth action plans that will raise our standings to the level they once were. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to a Zoom comment.
If anybody's on Zoom that would like to comment, you can raise your hand and I'll get you right on.
So again, if you would like to make a comment and you're on the Zoom, go ahead and please raise your hand.
Again, on Zoom, raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Okay, here we go.
All right, thank you. The committee will recognize Lisa Bial. Bial?
Lisa, go ahead, you're on.
you have the speakers on the?
Is she muted? Lisa, hold your comment for a second. We can't hear you.
She's not muted.
Not muted.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Lisa, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Is she muted?
I don't think so.
No, she's not.
Do we know that the sound is set up on the rover?
Is the volume turned up over there, guys?
I'm just gonna switch the sound source. Lisa, can you try and speak into your mic, please?
Yes, I am.
There you go.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you.
Perfect.
Oh, great.
You are on.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm asking that we revise the face covering policy. So as you know, we're almost at 90% vaccination rate at the high school and no positive cases since September 16. You probably know Hopkinton High School has exceeded the 80% vaccination threshold and requested and was granted permission by DESE to suspend the mask mandate. And I suggest that we do the same and move to a mask optional policy for those who are fully vaccinated. I'm aware that many have some HIPAA privacy concerns in that regard. I suggest that we follow the model implemented by Hopkinton High School. There, any students who wish to take advantage of the mask mandate suspension must submit a permission slip, proof of vaccination, and for management purposes, the teachers are supplied a list of those who have submitted the required paperwork. If a student who has not submitted the required paperwork is unmasked, teacher will ask the student to wear a mask. There is a system in place to elevate the situation should that become necessary. As there may be many reasons why Hopkinton High kids cannot wear masks, either fully vaccinated, immunocompromised, parents wish to continue having their children wear masks, or students simply just don't feel strong enough either way and never submitted the paperwork. That student not wearing a mask does not necessarily mean that the student is not fully vaccinated. Any assumptions about a student's medical status would be just that, an assumption. A student's wearing of a mask is not dispositive of the fact that person's vaccination status is full or none. So, no COVID cases for us for over a month, nearly 90% vaccination rate. So my question now is, what are we waiting for? Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
For the record, we need people to state their address. I don't recall if Mr. Shibley did, but he lives on 1A or Larch, I'm not sure.
I think you did.
Ms. Vile lives on Monument.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Do we have any other public comment from the floor? If so, please approach the mic. Thank you, Michelle.
Hi, my name is Willa Scudder, 25 Park Street, Hamilton. My husband Brian and I currently have one child of our 3 children in this district at the high school, freshman Brady Scudder. Our middle child, Rowan Scudder, is now a 3rd grader at Glen Urquhart, a decision we made after the lack of support from this district the past year and the decision-making and lack of confidence in this very committee. Our family, along with many other parents in this community, witness this committee slow walk their decision-making process until April of 2021, when finally those children got in the building not 5 days a week, but 4. The result was our children received 1/3 of the school days other states and other towns received. That we, the taxpayers, paid for, you still got the funding, and that the time our children deserved to be learning. Now, almost 2 years later, after a vaccine is now available for those who choose to take it, and the high school is well above the 80% vaccination rate deemed necessary by the state, I am appalled that this same committee is continuing to dismiss, ignore, and all but forget the sole reason they are a committee to begin with, which is to represent the education of the students. Our children, the students of this district, have done everything we and you have asked of them. They Zoomed, they quarantined, they pool tested, they masked, and now they have vaccinated. And for what? For detentions to be given by nurses? What is that teaching them? I implore this committee to vote this evening to change the local mask policy for the high school and for you to reconsider who in fact you are keeping safe and from what. Because you certainly are saving the next generation of students from experiencing a quality education that they are deserving of.
30 seconds, Willa.
This meeting is actually timely now that vaccines are available for ages 5 to 11. We will be giving extreme pause to vaccinating our other two children, knowing that the results are the same, policies are not changing, and they will experience continued developmental damage imposed by this educational system. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone else on Zoom that would like to speak?
Is there anyone on Zoom who'd like to speak? Please raise your hand.
No?
No one. No one
right.
on Zoom.
Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak?
Hi, thank you. Paul Gamber, 16 Juniper Street in Wenham. I was going to yield my time to Peter, but he was quick and concise and to the point, and he doesn't need my time, so I'm going to use it myself. On your agenda tonight, in one of the exhibits was the school committee superintendent protocols. The number 2 line item says the superintendent school committee represents the needs and interests of the students in the district and places the needs of the students in the interest above all other decisions. So I want you to keep that in mind as you hear some of our comments. I'm a healthcare provider, and as a dentist, there's only one side of the equation that's wearing a mask during my entire working day. There's been less than 1% transmission in dentistry between patients and doctors and staff. And I mean, masks may have something to do with it, but if only one side of the person is wearing a mask and there's no transmission, I'm not sure masks are doing as much as we think they do. Excuse me. Just some statewide numbers, looking at the mask.gov website, the last 14 days, new cases in Hamilton have been 11, in Wenham 10, which is less than 1 per day. All right. The testing that we're doing in Hamilton, Wenham is 1 new case found per every 1,000 tests done. Essex County, which makes up about 790,000 people, all the towns in Essex County. As far as fatalities are concerned, it's been 24 over the past 2 weeks, with the average age being 74 years old. So, again, who are we protecting with masks? First of all, from getting COVID, and if they got COVID, what's the risk to them of our students? Statewide in Massachusetts, from school age 5 to 19, there's been 2 deaths in the entire state of Massachusetts from COVID over the past 14 days. As of September 21st this year, there's never been a study that compares the mortality rates of vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. So that being said, I'd like to propose that the school committee not only discuss mask and lifting the mask mandates, but also make an agenda item where it's a discussion and a vote. because a discussion does nothing, kicks the can down the road. But if we get a vote every week, we kind of know where everybody stands. And we can have, since we can't have an open discussion within a town meeting like this, we can have discussions with you privately, phone calls, emails. Hopefully you guys respond. I know some of you do very well at that. And that way we can know where you guys stand on that, and we can have an open dialogue about this, and hopefully get to a resolution of removing masks for our students, which we already qualify for over the state's guidelines, which I don't even know how they got those guidelines, because there hasn't been any study that compares vaccinated versus unvaccinated. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to make public comment? You may not. It's a circumvention of the policy. So anyone else can speak for 3 minutes if they'd like.
Nobody else on here now. There's people
Hi,
on here, but nobody else.
Jim Moynihan, 25 Russ Street, Hamilton, also speaking in favor of removing the masks mandate from the schools, applying for the waiver. Recent New York Times article said the risk to children from coronavirus is basically immeasurably low, yet we are have been putting an immense burden. I just ran over here, so I'm a little out of breath and I can't breathe in this thing, but we've been putting an immense burden on our children with all these restrictions. And my son goes to WPI, and I got an email this week that there was the 4th suicide at WPI in as many months. 4 suicides, 4 months. And if you look at the news reports on that, the president of WPI directly links that to social isolation from all these restrictions. So an immeasurably low risk, and we're creating an immense burden on these kids. And I just think it's completely wrong. Excuse me. So whatever action you can take tonight, I urge you to do it. And let's get rid of these masks. A lot of great things going on this weekend for the kids. We got tournaments. We got a great play, I understand. Lots of great things to build on. Let's give these kids some more hope. Take some action tonight. Stand up for these kids. Do the right thing and get rid of these masks in the schools. Thank you very much. Go Generals.
Thank you. One more round. Does anyone on Zoom have something they'd like to say in public comment?
Anyone on Zoom, if you'd like to speak, raise your hand, please.
Any other public comment from the floor?
Hi, my name is Len Dolan. I live at 16 Howard Street in Wenham. First off, I want to thank all of you for the jobs that you do. I don't think most people in this town appreciate how difficult it is. However, tonight I am standing up here to ask that the buck stop in Hamilton Wenham. It seems like everything we've requested over the last 2 years, I go to the principal at the high school a lot. I have 4 children, 2 are at the high school, 2 are in college. I also want to say we're being inundated with suicide posts from parents on the 2 college websites that my kids attend. But what I mean by the buck stopping here, I'll go to the principal. I know the principal can't do anything. It has to go to the school committee, who then also looks at the health department, who kicks it out to DESE, who ultimately says that the CDC is making the decision. No one in this room has the ability to address the CDC, nor do we vote for them. We're voting for you to basically put together policies that help our children learn and have a great education in town. All I'm asking for is that the buck stop here. We start making decisions locally for the children of this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Any other comment on Zoom?
No? All right. Well, thank you everyone who spoke. As I said, we all listen carefully and take it in, and I understand it's a very stilted dialogue to speak and have no response. So thank you to everyone for your comments. With that, we're going to go ahead and close the Zoom, but if you're watching at home, you can tune into HWCam for the rest of the meeting. Next on our agenda is a review of school committee protocols, and tonight, Michelle Bailey is going to remind us how to behave.
So, as members of the school committee, we have met and discussed the ways that we would like to conduct our meetings and ourselves. As elected members of the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee, we, including the superintendent, accept the high honor and trust that has been placed in us to ensure that the students of the district receive the best education possible. To that end, we hereby commit to the following conduct of our business. And I'll be reading just 10, 11, and 12. Members will refer constituent concerns and complaints, including issues related to district personnel, to the appropriate person within the district chain of command, or chain of communication. The school committee meeting is a business meeting that is held in public, not a public meeting. The committee will make every effort to ensure meetings are effective and efficient. The school committee recognizes the importance of working collaboratively with town officials and actively seeking their support to improve the district.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Next up, we have our student representative report, and tonight we have Ryan Luell, the vice president of the Student Council and a senior at the high school. Ryan, the floor is yours.
All right. Let's push this.
You don't even have to push it.
You don't have to push it. Oh, okay.
Just stay close to it.
All right. Thank you. So I just have some updates from the schools in our district.
Speak up.
Yeah, maybe right into the
Right,
microphone.
if you can pull it, yeah.
Uncomfortably close to the microphone.
All right. To review that, I have some updates from the schools in the district. So at the high school, the theater department will be performing the classic musical, The Fantastics, November 4th, 5th, and 6th at 6:30 p.m. in the Farini Dramatic Center. Tickets will be available at the door, 10 for students and faculty, and 15 for general public. It is noted that masks will be required for all in attendance, and there is approximate 95-minute run time with one intermission. It's a great opportunity to see students such as Ian Castor-Kane, Leo Kagan, and Sinclair Gordon perform. So last week we sent out a poll to all high school students regarding the mask requirement. We asked them whether they felt comfortable with the removal of this requirement, with the expectation that unvaccinated students would still be required to wear masks, and that shared spaces with the middle school, such as the library and buses, will require the wearing of masks at all times. About 286 students responded, where 87% said yes, they felt comfortable with this. In addition to that, we asked them whether they felt that pool testing would be, pool testing as an additional protocol for safety would be something they'd be okay with, in which 84% said yes. We also asked if students had any concerns regarding that. So some that came up from many was that there may be potential difficulty enforcing mask usage for unvaccinated students, as well as enforcing pool testing. Some felt that there are unfair circumstances for students who are unable to receive vaccinations, and others felt that there are privacy concerns because students who continue to wear a mask, unvaccinated or unvaccinated, may be the subject of judgment or isolation, regardless of the circumstances in which they're still wearing a mask. And others felt others felt unsafe because there could be a potential surge in cases following a holiday season, which is coming up because students may be traveling. One thing to note is that the Hopkinton School District, who had decided to lift the mask mandate, only had a 60% agreement rate among students, while we currently have 87 from the responses. In terms of sports, HW Boys Soccer are in the 16th seed for the state tournament. They will be playing the Mashpee Falcons on Friday, November 5th at 2 p.m. Volleyball are in the number 4 seed at the state tournament and will host the winner of Assabet Valley and Boston English on Friday, November 5th at 6:30 p.m. Field hockey are the number 21 seed at the state tournament. They'll travel to Amesbury to face the Indians on November 6th at 4 p.m. Girls soccer are the number 2 seed at the state tournament. They will host the winner of Bishop Connolly and Tri-County Regional on Sunday, November 7th at 1. And then football are the number 3 seed in the state tournament and will host the Leicester Wolverines on Saturday, November 6th at 2 p.m. On another note, winter sports registration has opened. This includes sports such as boys and girls basketball, ice hockey, wrestling, cheer, gymnastics, and swim and dive. And more information on that can be found on the HW Athletics homepage. So for the middle school, they are finishing up quarter 1. Students have been very active inside and outside the classroom. Student council elections were held yesterday on election day. The cooking club has been active in cooking scones, things such as scones, calzones, and dumplings. Some new clubs are the mountain biking club and the improv club. Fall intramurals have just ended and winter intramurals will be announced soon. And some other clubs that have been active are the Art Club, the Gender Sexuality Alliance, Chorale, and Jazz Band. Cutler recently hosted their first all-school meeting outside to bring Cutler students together as a school community for the first time, with the trivia led by Mr. Kaufman to introduce new Cutler staff. This week, school counselor Ann Creelson will begin Feelings Friday. These are brief whole school announcements often done by students that focus on expanding emotional literacy, fostering the development of coping skills, and building community. Melissa Graham is continuing String Jam, a ukulele club and big community builder for 5th grade students. They meet before school 1 day a week and will be performing at some all-school meetings. And this year, Mrs. Graham will also be expanding the ukulele experience to 4th grade students after school called Ukes on Deck. This year, Cutler School's overarching theme is We Are a Rainbow of Possibilities, a project to create a community promoting belonging for all. Winthrop recently started their school-wide implementation of Winthrop Cares to encourage students to embody the traits cooperation, assertiveness, responsibility, empathy, and self-control at school and in the community. Friends of Winthrop hosted an outdoor Halloween happenings on Friday night with a great turnout, and Winthrop students are currently writing cards and letters to veterans in recognition of Veterans Day. And finally, but last but not least, Bucher Lake Winthrop is exploring the CARES core values. They did at a recent outdoor assembly. Being outside allowed them to gather as a group safely. And then Bucher has been looking at the fall assessment data to ensure the literacy intervention program best meets the needs of students. That's it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Does anyone on the committee have a comment or a question? Michelle?
Hi, thank you, Ryan, for that update. Is it possible for you guys to go back to the student survey on the masks? You know, we have around 480 students, I think, in the high school. I may be off a little bit. So you just have a little above a 50% response rate. I think it would be great if we could just get that other 200 or just a little bit more, just so we can see what's happening there. Is that possible, or is that putting too much on?
I think if we gave more time for students to respond to the survey, I think that would be possible.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It was my understanding that the school had a dance for Halloween. And I was
Yes,
just
the high
curious
school.
if you know how that went.
Yeah, the juniors hosted a Halloween dance, I believe, last Friday. That went very well. It was in the cafeteria, and students were encouraged to wear costumes. And
So the social events were able
Yes.
to continue on. Okay, great.
Great. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Very good, thorough report. Next up, we have our consent agenda, which includes warrants, minutes, some donations, and some other grants. Before we go, is there anything that anyone would like to hold?
like to place a hold on the 2021-22 Winter Cheer Cooperative Agreement.
Okay. Anything else?
I would like to hold on the alumni donation from Brendan Crampon, please.
Okay. Anything else? No? Okay. Secretary Carr, do you have a motion for us?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as written, except for the holds as mentioned previously.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Michelle Horgan. All right, there's no discussion, so all those in favor, raise your hand. All right, that is unanimous, 5 votes to none. So we'll go to the first hold, which is item C, the first one, the alumni donation. Jen?
My only concern was, I love insect collections. I've made several when I was in grad school. But for long-term care, it's minimal, but somebody does have to change the mothballs on those every year, or they'll get eaten by insects. Are we okay with that? Like, we have that in the plan, like somebody knows to do that so it doesn't get ruined?
You want to talk to that one, Brian?
Can a little bit. Yeah, that's something that Deb Clapp, who was the science teacher who was working with that alumni, can certainly make sure that that happens, or another member of the science department. But I'm glad that you point that out, because that's something that I can make sure gets taken care of.
Harvard actually lost half their beetle collection because somebody forgot to change out the mothballs one year, so
Great point.
that's why I just made that point.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Jen. How did you know that there would be mothballs? Because that's not necessarily always the only preservation method. Do we know, are the insects, especially at a graduate level, could they be treated with something like arsenic or some other carcinogenic substance? Because mothballs themselves are carcinogenic. And full disclosure, you're talking to a museum registrar and a professor, so we probably are dangerously informed on this. Do we know the preservation method for the insects?
No, he didn't disclose that, so I could follow up with him and just hear about what that might be.
Yeah.
Okay.
If that's helpful.
All the entomologists that I've talked to at a couple of universities say mothballs are standard for insects.
Yeah.
For different animals, you might use formalin or ethanol for wet samples.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great to clarify that just from a material safety standpoint, to know what's in them.
All right, we'll do.
Thank you.
Good catch, Jen.
Are we going to make a motion to approve the donation?
Right.
So I move that we accept Brendan Cramphorn's donation of an insect collection.
Second.
Second by Michelle Horgan. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. All those in favor? All right, and the vote is unanimous. I'd like to note for the minutes that David Polito has arrived to the meeting about 1 minute ago, so arrived at 7:30 p.m. Okay, next on the hold is the winter cheer agreement. Michelle?
So this agreement is between Hamilton Wenham School and private school in Wenham. And as I have previously, I would like to understand what the private school is bringing to the table to benefit the district, since the district does collect money from the taxpayers. And so they would be getting a benefit from the taxpayers. However, that property does not participate in paying taxes. So I'd like to know what they're bringing to the table. Yep. Thank you.
Superintendent Tracy?
Thank you. I had a long discussion with Craig Genualdo about this after you and I had talked the other day. Earlier in the year, we usually have, during the fall season, cheerleading that coincides with the football season. This year we were unable to have it because of just low numbers, really extremely low numbers. Some of the kids came to Craig and said, what if we could get enough kids to do it in the winter? We have a winter option for cheering as well. So the idea from from kids and some of the adults. We have a new teacher who is actually rallying this as well, was to try and get as many kids as possible involved. So it looks like there would be 8 or 9 from Hamilton Wenham regional schools, and then between 6 and 7 from the academy. And I think the reality to that is it gives our kids an opportunity to take part in cheerleading and to participate in you know, the extracurricular seasons that they really love it. I mean, the girls that cheer for us are deeply involved and embedded for years in the cheerleading program. So I just think it's an opportunity for us, and just so people are aware, kids that come in from the academy would pay our fees. They would pay the same fees that our kids would have to pay based on numbers and transportation costs and things like that.
And can I just add that the district is also paying, what, 40% of those fees?
I think it's only 25%.
Okay, 25%
Yeah.
of those fees. Will they also be paying 25% more since we're covering some of that?
No, the expectation's only been to pay the fee that our students pay.
So they are getting a benefit of public money, even though they're a private entity, and may not be residents of either town.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
I have another question. Have we approached, it's my understanding that they would, do they only do home games or do they do away games?
So it depends on transportation costs, it depends on size of the team. There's also competitions. Usually during the fall and the winter season, there are separate individual competitions that are held by the MSAA for cheerleaders. So they would, you know, the ones I'm most familiar with is they would have, you know, 20 teams come to, say, North Reading High and compete on a Saturday by school, and that's really their opportunity to show, you know, to kind of show their routines and show what the work that they put in. So.
And so did we approach Penguin Hall School and ask them to provide a bus, since they do own their own and operate their own buses, so that our students wouldn't have to pay that cost?
It's probably worth a conversation. I don't think anybody's asked that question, honestly.
Okay.
But again, there's the home games are where our kids generally are, not all away games. So it just depends on transportation and opportunity. A lot of times they are stacked on a bus with a team that may be going to the same place, just because of the team size.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Do we know how much this subsidization is going to cost us, like ballpark? Because we are essentially subsidizing a private school.
Right now, we don't. We won't until we get our winter registrations. It just opened up, so once we know our numbers, then they figure out the total overall numbers and then the actual amounts that each student pays.
If I could just comment too, I'd like to stress that we are giving our students an opportunity to participate because of the cooperation with Penguin Hall. So although it seems that Penguin Hall is riding on our backs, it does give our student athletes an opportunity to participate. So
there wouldn't be enough.
Jen, don't forget to speak into the mic.
So there wouldn't be enough students to form a team if we didn't combine with Penguin Hall?
That's what Eric is saying.
that and also it does defray the costs of our students too.
That is correct.
I have a clarifying question. Does anyone else have anything else? So in terms of the cost, if I understand prior presentations from Mr. Genualdo, the reason it's defrayed, as Ms. Shaw was saying, is that the more students who are participating, the fee overall goes down because it's split amongst a higher number of students. Is that right?
Correct.
So the other thought I'm thinking about this, and I don't know that we can or should limit it, but even if a student was at Penguin Hall, I think Michelle raises a good point about public versus private funds, but if the students from Penguin Hall are in fact Hamilton or Wenham residents, they're still paying their public money into the district regardless of whether or not their kids come here. So the notion of subsidy would seemingly only really apply to non-Hamilton Wenham students who might be participating, because the Hamilton Wenham kids, they're paying for the school system whether they're using it or not. So just in terms of sort of thinking through the public subsidy question, it might be helpful to know how many of the Penguin Hall students are not actually from Hamilton Wenham. Because I could see that being
quite a
a
few,
critical
since
night
now
out.
they're looking for dormitory space, so.
Pardon me?
Say a few, since they're looking for dormitory space and they have all of those buses so that they can run the bus routes out of town.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I just want to say that really in this town, if you're not a soccer player, it's really hard to get enough players to form teams at just about every level. Right? I coach a football team with 22 people, right? It's 11 people on the field at all times. So, you know, and same thing with coaching softball, 10 people on the field. I usually have about 11 or 12 girls on my team, you know. So I know how hard it is to run these teams, and, you know, we don't open up these co-op opportunities if we have numbers. You'll never see a co-op opportunity for soccer in this town. You know, so in order for our students to participate, we have to sort of realize that we have a very small population to try and field, you know, all of these wonderful programs and be competitive in the Cape Ann League. So.
Okay, noted.
Ask one more question. Have we approached other districts to co-op with them, or have we had other districts approach us?
We have not had other districts approach us. Most districts do have enough students to run a cheering team, and
Oh, including Manchester.
it's
Essex.
it's in the fall compared to the winter. You'll see fewer schools run a winter team usually. We flipped it around because we really had no opportunity for the girls to participate in the fall season. So this was just another attempt to give them the opportunity to participate.
Okay, are we ready
Okay.
for a motion, if anyone is so inclined?
I'm wondering if we can table this until we can find out if Penguin Hall is willing to provide transportation.
Okay, there's been a motion to table. Is there a second? Okay, I hear no motion, I hear no second, so the motion fails. Is there any other motion to take a vote?
I move that we accept the 2021-2022 Winter Chair Cooperative Agreement as recommended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ooh, stereo second by David Polito on that one. All right, any further discussion? No? All right, all those in favor? All those opposed? Abstention?
Well, do you vote an abstention?
Did you raise your hand for no?
No, I did not.
Okay, so the motion is 5 votes in favor, no votes opposed, and 1 abstention. Okay, next up we have new business, and Superintendent Tracy, I think, would like to introduce his new superintendent coach.
Thank you very much.
that
Gives
stands
me
for.
great pleasure to introduce Mr. John Sills. John is my coach through the Superintendent's Induction program that you are all aware of. And John and I have met several times and connected on a few occasions now in both individual conferences, online and in person, but also within the program as well. He's one of a number of coaches that we work with in the program on a almost bi-weekly basis now. So John is a former superintendent of the Bedford Public Schools. He's in his over 40 years. I think he crossed the 40-year mark, right, John, of working in education and being involved in education. So he's been great to learn from and kind of bounce things off of, and I appreciate his support. John Sills.
Thank you, Superintendent Tracy. Just very briefly for the public's knowledge, it's clear that the school committee is aware that the new superintendent's induction program, which is co-sponsored by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Massachusetts Superintendents Association has been around for about 12 years. Our present 3 cohorts, because it's a 3-year program, comprise about 70 superintendents in the Commonwealth. So most superintendents have gone through this program. We're very proud of the work that it does to support new superintendents as they, build the foundation for their strategic work on behalf of the school committee and the kids and families and faculty and staff of their communities. It's been a pleasure to begin to work with Superintendent Tracy. Our advice to new superintendents, particularly in their first year, whether they are from the district that they're working in or not, is to hit the ground learning, as we say, because going a little bit slow in the beginning to go far, to lay the groundwork, build the relationships is so important. And it's clear to me that Eric has made a great start. So thank you very much.
Right.
John.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay, next we have the secondary curriculum update, and I think this is Principals Hovey and Menegoni. Is this right?
Yes. No, you just got to change the input. Switch the input. Ryan, you can AirPlay to that.
Is it working?
Yeah, you can. It's working now. Buca Rover. Is it up there now? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Nice job.
Thank you for coming.
Is it up there yet? Got to do his homework. Okay.
What am I looking for, Mr. Tracy?
Buca Rover.
Okay, there it is.
3285.
All right, thank you for having us tonight. Eric had asked us to, or Superintendent Tracy had asked us to provide you with an update on our progress on the secondary curriculum work. As part of our goals for this year, one of the tasks was, how do I advance this here? Oh, there we go. All right. Part of our goals was to do an audit of our current curriculum documents at the secondary level. So that includes both the middle school and the high school. And our purpose for that was to work towards our district goal 2B, which is to develop an MTSS structure at the secondary level, and that's in progress, as well as to work towards high school goal 4 on their school improvement plan, which is to complete the requirements for the 2022 NEASC accreditation visit. Both of these goals require us to work towards a complete and well-documented curriculum. So that's the reason behind the work that we're doing. So what is curriculum mapping? The work that we've been doing is to make sure that there is alignment of learning standards and teaching at all grade levels. So we're looking for a well-organized and purposefully designed curriculum. Ideally, it's free of gaps and needless repetitions so that you're not overdoing or underdoing any important topics. And it's aligned across lessons, courses, subjects, as well as with a thoughtful and careful vertical integration moving from one grade level to the next. The key thing about curriculum mapping is it's never done. It's something that is an ongoing process that's going to require regular maintenance. The sort of common simile, what's the word I'm looking for here? Anyway, the thing that it's often related to is changing the oil on your car. You know, you don't just say, I've changed oil once, I'm done. You need to change it every 3,000 to 5,000 miles to make sure that it's working appropriately. So you're always taking a look at it and you're addressing the effectiveness of the curriculum. So after every lesson, we're asking people to reflect on it so that when they do the lesson again the next year, they have made sure that if it didn't work, they've made adjustments. If it worked great, they're documenting that. There's also changing standards and times. So curriculum mapping is comprised of 3 stages. Stage 1 is, what are the desired results? What do you want students to know and be able to do? Stage 2 is the evidence. How can students show you what they know and are able to do? And that would include assessments, both formal and informal. And stage 3 is the learning plan, the learning experiences in which students will engage. So I'm going to pass this on to Brian. He's going to talk a little bit about the process we followed.
Okay, so this was a seemingly daunting task at the start. However, through the leadership shown by the curriculum leaders, I think they broke this down into a project that was really manageable. And just to give you an idea of the time frame for this, we began this work really right away at the start of the school year, and we were able to complete an audit of all high school and middle school courses by October 15th. That was the goal that we set. We were able to hit that. But again, I want to thank the curriculum leaders for their work with this. It took a lot of effort to get through each of the courses, but also I'll show you a little bit about the action plans, how we're going to deal with some of the things that came up in the curriculum audit. So every middle school and high school course has or should have a curriculum map. Now the should have is important to point out because most of our courses at the high school and middle school have curriculum maps that are done according to the UBD format that Craig just talked about. But if a course does not have a curriculum map, that does not mean there is no curriculum. In some cases, the curriculum is there, the plan is active, it's living, however, it just isn't in the format yet. Okay? And so each curriculum map or curriculum document was analyzed for completion of all of the 3 stages that Craig spoke of. And in total, there are 94 different high school courses and 41 middle school courses that the curriculum leaders had to take a look at. And based upon the results of the analysis, okay, we put each curriculum map into one of 2 categories. And again, the curriculum leaders deserve all the credit for this. They developed these 2 pathways based on some research that they had done of districts that have undergone these curriculum audits recently. If a course needed to complete all 3 stages of the curriculum map, we put them what's called the red path, and I'll show you what that is in a little bit. And if a curriculum map was really deemed to be done is not the right word, but all 3 stages were present, they were on a green path, and that really is about review and checking for quality at each one of the stages. So really what the departments did was they looked at every single unit that was in every one of the course maps just to see how finished that course was, and then they assigned the appropriate pathway to it. The action plan pathway is really what that is. So if you're trying to look at numbers overall, if you assume each course has about 8 or so units across the school year, and you're looking at, I don't know, perhaps close to 150-ish or so different courses, they're looking at 1,200 different units of study. So there was quite a bit of work to get done in roughly a month's time. So it was pretty impressive, I think. This is what a green curriculum path looks like, and now it's generic. It's not assigned to any one particular course right now up here that you can see on the screen. Curriculum leaders did specify for each course, you know, for example, chemistry. High school chemistry is one I know that is on the curriculum path because they determined that all of the stages are there. So what you can see is in the right-hand column, that is the timeline that they're going to be using from, it actually started mid-October when the audit was done, and we were able to say, okay, are you a red path course or a green path course? From the middle of October through the end of the year, what's going to happen? So on October 20th, for example, all the teachers at that department meeting just confirmed, yes, the maps are indeed done, or the map for this particular course is indeed done. And then The job of teachers who are assigned to each course, so chemistry teachers would be assigned to take the chemistry curriculum map through this green path, will, according to these dates here, do the action steps that are assigned to those particular dates. So for example, next week on the teacher workshop day in the morning, the teachers who are responsible for the chemistry curriculum map are going to review stage 1, make sure that the standards that are there and the transfer goals are where they would like them. So it's really a quality control check is what the green pathway is doing. And as you move down the curriculum or the green curriculum path, you can see that it attends to each of the stages. There's another review for stage 1, stage 2, and it just kind of extends through the rest of the year, because what we've been able to do is assign a number of the Wednesdays and even parts of, or entire parts of the day-long professional development days for the teachers to attend to this curriculum work, because you can't sit down for a half an hour after school and do this, or even an hour on a Wednesday. You really need a pretty devoted period of time and a sustained effort. So that is why we've done a number of Wednesdays in addition to the full PD days. So that is a green curriculum path. A red curriculum path, I mean, it really looks the same. The only difference here is that we're making sure that the stages that are not done at all are indeed complete. And they have the same number of Wednesdays assigned to them. It's just that the focus is more different, and these courses are actually really prioritized. So you might have more teachers actually working on these courses that are in the red pathway, just to make sure that those curriculum maps get to a point where you can actually engage in that review process. So Craig, did you want to jump in here and just talk about some of these courses?
Sure, happy to jump
Okay.
in. So what you see here is the overall green and red paths for the middle school. There's another slide here. Within each one of these, the teachers have broken down by unit. So, you know, where 7th grade English is on the green path, that might be 6 out of 8 units are on the green path and 2 units are still on the red path. So the green and red is sort of an overall assessment. I'm not going to read through each of these, but I just want to give you a sense of where we are. Math might stand out where it says none is on the green path. The math curriculum is actually very well documented. It's just not in that UBD format right now. We're using a curriculum through Open Up Resources. So what they're looking at is where are there variances between what we use in the curriculum and what they are actually practicing. So there might be specific units that they are using adjustments to. So that's all being documented, and we'll see some shifting between this as time goes on. So I'm going to just slowly go through these. I'm not going to read them all because there's quite a bit here. But again, here's world language, health and wellness, which includes our health and wellness quarterly class, as well as physical education, and our fine arts and our fine arts courses. At the high school, you can see the English and math courses, science and social studies courses, the world language and health and wellness courses, and the fine arts courses. So in conclusion, curriculum mapping is going to be an ongoing process. This is something that should never end. We should be continuing to do this on a regular basis, and it's going to continue to evolve as different circumstances present themselves. So as we go back and we examine our curriculum and learning opportunities through a DEI lens as part of our DEI audit, that's going to be another way we look at curriculum, and we'll likely make adjustments. As we improve supports for all students through our MTSS work, we're going to be revising our curriculum that way. And then we're also going to need to make adjustments based on changes in state curriculum frameworks, which are changing on a fairly regular basis every couple of years. So the status of the course maps by the end of the year, some will be ready for the green action plan. Some of the green ones will be further along. Some will still be in the red. And some of them may require some additional work this summer to really move them forward. But this is going to be ongoing. The goal is to move everything into the green over time and keep it there. So that's the end of our presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone have any comments or questions? No one? No questions?
Can I comment? Just make a comment?
Sure.
Thank you. I think it's important to note the timeline. We put them on a difficult timeline with the goal that we set to say, oh, October 15th, we're going to have all this work done. I really want to, identify both Craig and Brian, their assistants, and the curriculum leaders for the work. They really came together, and they were excited about it. When I went to one of the meetings, after the meeting, one of the curriculum leaders was like, look what we're doing. This is what we're going to come up with, and this is how we're going to manage it. So I think it's important to note that I really appreciate the work that was done by the entire group, because it was a massive undertaking, 1,200 different units within the district at the secondary level. And certainly, I appreciate the kind of the openness of it as well as we move into the accreditation process. As we know, we had highlighted 2 years ago that we didn't meet the foundational standard for curriculum, and it was because of lack of documentation. That bus is moving now, and I think it's important that we can show this process, demonstrate the work that's done in between now and March, continue that work, and then in March, when the committee comes, be able to show that we have a viable process that will continue into the future. I think that will help us in the meeting of that foundational standard. I believe it's standard 2 for curriculum.
Jen?
I actually do have a question. I was a bit concerned at the high school level that so many of the AP classes were in that red path, because their curriculums, to the best of my knowledge, are highly regimented because they have to prepare students for those AP exams. Is it just like they're not in the format that you want, or like the AP classes need major amounts of curriculum work? Because that actually did concern me.
Yeah, so that you actually answered your own question there, I believe. Each AP course actually has a syllabus that we have to submit, so the syllabus isn't necessarily the curriculum, but the teacher beside that also has the curriculum done. It's just that it's not in that UBD format, because that wasn't a priority because of the structure of that AP already demands anyway, so we kind of said, all right, that's going to have to wait until we get the other ones done.
Yeah.
But we do want to take care of that, because the process of doing this, of designing curriculum with the end in mind, every course still needs to go through that.
Yeah, I figured it was something like that, but I just wanted to make sure.
Michelle?
I was just going to, and both of you are confident that the work can continue, so when NEASC comes in March or April, that we'll be ready to roll?
Well, it will be ready to roll with an answer. The answer may not be that 100% of the courses are fully mapped, but what we can present to NEASC is that we're in the middle of a process, and we have a plan through the end of the year and into the summer for getting not the curriculum done, because that's not the right term for it really, but getting it into the place where it's documented, and then we can begin that continuous review cycle so that it becomes part of everyday planning. I mean, that's the important thing to point out, is that curriculum maps don't just sit there on the side to say that it's been done. It should be something that we're always revisiting every single day as we're planning for our students.
Okay, great, thank you.
Julia?
Is there a goal for a certain percentage or a certain number to be mapped by March?
I think a specific number, no, there really isn't. That we're going to have to see how far along we get, because again, these dates are laid out. We already saw one Wednesday kind of disappear with the wind. Hopefully we don't have any more disappear with the snow. So we have to be mindful of that. But the nice thing about this is that the teachers are really focused on it, because everybody's been given a job. Like, this is what you got to do for the next 15 Wednesdays that are stretched out over the course of the year. So at that point, we'll be able to see, but the important thing that a process is in place, and I think that will give us a measure for how long this kind of work takes, because it's going to be something that we just have to do over and over and over again.
All right, thank you.
I have a question. So are you not just mapping and documenting what already exists and sort of turning it from flavor A to flavor B? Have you actually found any places where you would actually change what's being taught in terms of the content itself? Is that part of this process?
Yeah, I think that this is definitely an opportunity for that, and I know in speaking with Bob Hickey and Kristen Borges, that's something that as they go through this process of looking at all the units, that they're doing that. And that's already come up, and that's been a discussion in those departments. So that's the other good thing about this continuous review cycle, is that you're always looking at, is this really what we want the kids to be doing? Is this something that's appropriate for 2021 and prepares them for the future? So getting our heads into this more regularly will lead to more of those kinds of questions, which is what you want.
I'll just add to that last year, when we really had to shift how we taught and what we taught, and prioritize specific information, has really stuck with us, and people are still using that lens as they rewrite this curriculum, because it brought in a lot of new practices and a lot of new ideas, and they're starting to be incorporated in a in-person format rather than a remote and hybrid format. So we're definitely seeing some shifts from that.
Interesting. Okay. Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, thank you very much. Great job. Okay, next up we have draft 2 of our superintendent goals. Superintendent Tracy.
Thank you. Everybody has this updated version. I kind of went back after last meeting, had some discussions with my coach, had some discussions with some of the surrounding area superintendents, tried to hone in on some of the things that we talked about at the last meeting, and I actually removed the superintendent's induction program from here as a goal, because I'm going to do it either way, whether it's on paper or not. I'm participating and involved in it, and I think it's just important to me professionally, so I'm not necessarily making it a goal that's out publicly, but please know that I am still totally committed for at least the next 2 years. The first 2 we were okay with, if we go back to that, and the third goal I've changed it a little bit on future focus, and I really want to try to grow this goal over a couple of years, using the Creating Schools That Thrive book by Stephanie Rogan, and we've used her work in the past as a guide for us to be able to build and grow this. So as you know, we're working on the Portrait of the Graduate process. The idea is to take that process and develop the strategic plan over the next 6 months after that. So from January-ish, depending on when we reschedule, January-ish to the end of the school year, we will work on the various pieces of the strategic planning process, and that is not easy. As I mentioned last time, we don't have the ability to pay a consultant that was like it was originally planned because we just don't have the finances there. So I will take that process on, and I will do that process for the district. And pretty straightforward, although they're similar to the Portrait of the Graduate. I want to be able to open it up into the community. So there'll be a similar process where there's focus groups, there'll be surveys, there'll be, I really need to better understand this group, how you feel and what you see for the future of the district, and that's really a big part of laying the foundation for this. Collecting lots of data. I've been doing that recently, just kind of looking at numbers over the last 10 years and trying to figure out some projection forward, but also going into things like revisiting the mission. Is the mission, really, are we committed to that mission? Is the vision, the vision that I've seen for 9 years now, or are we beyond that? I think it's important to revisit all of those along this process while involving as many people as possible. And as you know, I've been committed to the communication and outreach and connection with people, so I really think that's an important part of my work here this year that will set the groundwork for the next few years for our for our continued growth and improvement, but also our future focus. Like, as I think Anna said it last time, what are the big picture goals that we have for this district? Where do we want to go? You know, there are a lot of things for us to look at. Our infrastructure needs a heck of a lot of work. You know, our curriculum, we're working on it. Resourcing, so we're doing resourcing across the K-5 right now, just to figure out what we have and what building and make sure that teachers have what they need. So all those pieces will come together as we develop this process and come together on what do we believe about our district? What do we believe about what our kids deserve and our families deserve? And I think it's just really an important part of who I am as a person, but also in moving the district forward and kind of into that future focus, if you will. I think there's lots of room for conversations at every single level, and it's exciting work as well. I think it's just really worthwhile work for us to do, because it's just one of those questions. If I said, okay, school committee, what do you believe? You know, we want to get that out there publicly and make sure people understand that. Same with building levels and things like that. So that's my third goal. And the fourth goal, the multi-tiered system of support, it's expanded a little bit from last time and really tried to build upon a number of the opportunities that we have by having people like Jen Clifford and Rebecca Butler and their coaches working at the literacy level. Craig and Brian are just beginning that process at the secondary level, where our consultants will move towards starting to lay out the patterns and the things that they need. We have to develop data sources that really don't exist at the secondary level, not like they do at the elementary level anyway. I think for any of you who are familiar with K-5, generally we always know where our kids stand in reading, writing, and the kind of the basics of our testing. We'll go through 3 rounds of testing. We have lots of data to talk about, and there are data teams that are active. So now we're pushing that up to the secondary level. My ultimate goal would be, by the end of year 2 for me, to see those data systems in place across elementary and secondary, so that we can have those continued conversations and really serve the needs of our kids, our most needy kids especially, but also trying to develop and build opportunities that may be different than what we have right now. So that MTSS structure also allows us to respond to the social emotional needs of kids. I think the work that we've been doing, we use some of the CASTLE program, social emotional programming, and Kristen Lazaro and her team, counseling team, pre-K to 12 is really an integral part of that. So I really have to kind of coordinate what that looks like, how it fits at each level, and then really, again, trying to find opportunities to get our kids connected to adults, connected to programs, giving them opportunities to build, grow, and improve through their times here. So there's a lot of facets to this MTSS program. So I basically rounded the goals down to those 4. Certainly there are a million other things going on that I could set goals for, but I think these are the most connected with the district goals that, you know, we've agreed upon since the summer.
Okay. Any comments or questions for the superintendent?
I have a comment.
Julia?
Thank you for incorporating our feedback from the last round. I definitely can see a lot of my comments incorporated, and especially with goal number 3, because I think one of our main concerns was that just simply creating the portrait of a graduate is not a goal, but it's a piece of a bigger goal, and I really fully feel that you encapsulated exactly what I was feeling and incorporated the feedback, so thank you.
Michelle?
So our last 3 superintendents have had the luxury of starting in the summer and not when school is in full process. Is it your intention to do an entry plan during the school year, or how is that going to work? Or is that what the strategic plan will be?
So I'm doing them in tandem right now. I'm actually working with John on an entry plan. We just actually had that conversation last week.
Okay.
I started the program with them on October 10th or something like that. I forget the exact date, but as part of that work, it's, you know, here's the process for entry planning. So I'm actually doing them in tandem. I wouldn't generally, if I would have started in July, I would have done the entry plan, then the goals, and then, you know, kind of continue from there. So a lot of these will carry over too as well. I think it's important to note that. We have already a push on our Portrait of the Graduate because the day I had to cancel school was
Right.
the night of Portrait of the Graduate, unfortunately, and now we're trying to figure out another date to put it in. So those things we'll have to wrestle with as we go, but this is a heavy load. It's the district goals in general, and certainly I will put everything I have into making sure we continue to move this district forward. As you know, as we all know, we've kind of lost some ground, and it's important for me personally to kind of make that ground up and drive us kind of forward in two leaps rather than one and wait and one and wait. I just want to really kind of move this bus forward for us, for all of us.
And I'm sorry, I wasn't at the last meeting, so I didn't give my feedback.
worries.
But so it seems to me that an entry plan is a significant body of work, and if you're doing a significant body of work, that should be in the goal somehow, because the goal is how you're going to be evaluated, and that is a significant body of work. So I just think it should be in there somewhere.
Where would you suggest that would go?
It's probably in there with the strategic plan.
Okay.
Because to me, that's going to be like a first step.
Yep.
Or you know, it's like the introductory paragraph.
Yeah.
So, and maybe it's not, you know, it's in the goal. Maybe it's one of the benchmarks along the way or something. But
I can add that in.
Any other comments?
I just wanted to say how happy I was in seeing that pretty much every single goal involves communication with the community and with parents, teachers, and staff. I just think that's amazing.
Thank you.
Michelle?
I don't want to put you and John on the spot, but are you comfortable sharing what your coach feels, how he feels about the goals you set for yourself?
I think the conversation was that this is a heavy load. This is really a heavy load to carry, and a seasoned superintendent might not take on this load.
I agree.
In all honesty, I mean, for me, it's a personal thing. You know, my commitment here, and I think it's doable given the people we have in place. We have some high quality leaders in place. We have some fantastic teaching and support staff across the district. And I think I'm working to try to improve connections with them so that they can help us to build this product as we build our, you know, improve the quality of our school system. And that includes, you know, the people part, the human part, which is kind of like my number one priority, but also all the other sub-pieces of that. What's happening in the schools? What do the schools look like? What do our playing fields look like? What do our theaters look like? They all intertwine as we build these belief systems and the vision for the future for our kids. So I think no matter what, the work will continue, but for me, it's just important personal work that I think is just the way I need to do it to be successful in this role.
Great, thank you.
Did I get it right, John? Or
It's very ambitious. But typically, a new superintendent will focus on entry.
I'm sorry, I hate to ask you to do this. Could you mind speaking, one, keep your mask on, but two, speak into the mic or else the recording won't pick it up.
Since I've been asked, it is an ambitious set of goals for a first year. Typically, a new superintendent will focus on entry, on sustaining what's already in motion, shepherding it, and on developing professionally through the new superintendent's program. From what I understand from Superintendent Tracy, you know, because there's been some turnover and a feeling of a real commitment to getting things moving, you know, he is feeling comfortable with adding some more substantive goals this year. Certainly everything I've heard from Superintendent Tracy makes me feel confident in his decisions.
Okay.
Thank you.
David, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can really think of that statement a little of, this is quite a hefty task. You know, this would be a hefty task list for a superintendent who's been in place for quite some time. And, you know, while I was a little nervous about sort of sending Eric back to the table to sort of put more on his plate, I think it's up to us as the committee to understand how big of an ask this is, and, you know, realize that making good progress here would in fact be a success for the year, right? You know, I'm comfortable with this as long as we're not expecting everything to be 100% complete by, you know, the time of review. So, you know, that's all I really wanted to say is, you know, I know this is a lot, and I appreciate, you know, Eric willing to just, you know, roll up his sleeves and dive right in. But we haven't had a smooth school year in so long. You know, if you have the time to get through most of this, I'll be more than impressed. So.
I think what I would offer is that some of it is that you are going to be forced to do some of this work whether you wanted to or not, because the district goals over there require you to do so. So if we're actually as a district going to do those 4 things, you sort of have to do this. So I feel a little bit that you inherited, you know, a roadmap that was already a heavy lift. And I agree with David that a lot of these goals are not completion goals. They're the start of a very heavy process. To some degree, this is the year where this district really takes a hard look at itself in terms of its curriculum, its DEI purpose, all of that curriculum mapping. You know, the fact that we have that many classes that need to be rejiggered. We have these massive budget issues. We have the turf project. I mean, really, this is the year, I think, that Hamilton Wenham decides who it's going to be. And I think that that requires a committee and a superintendent that embrace the heaviness of that lift. So what I like about this too, I also feel like you took my feedback well, especially with goal number 3, because you're positioning yourself not just as an administrator or a box checker of like, yes, I did it. You're positioning yourself as a leader within the community on heavy topics. And for me personally, that's something I expect in a superintendent. And I like the fact that you've put that in there and you've embraced it. And I continue to think, I think you're up for the challenge, but I agree with David, we need to be thoughtful about how we work together on that. But some of these goals, you're gonna have to do them whether you wanted to or not. So I think that we just have to work through them and recognize to some degree, I think, while there is no formal entry plan, I agree with Michelle. I think that could be put into, especially goal number 3 as a piece of information. If you read your weekly updates carefully, you do make comments that show your hand. You're tipping your hand to us a little bit about the things that you think need to be worked on or are working on, or that you're seeing that you want to improve. So as someone who loves every syllable ever used in the English language, I like the length of your updates, and I think that they provide really good context for what you see and what you're trying to improve, even though it's not a formal entry plan. But I agree with Michelle, we should probably make that more formal. So.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Okay. Next is voting on a new special education teacher. I'm assuming, is that you?
Yep, that's me.
Well, not the teacher, but the presenter.
We are requesting this. This is a grant-funded position. I want to stress that it's a grant-funded position. This grant can be used this year or next year. We are in need for some relief for our special ed teachers at the middle school. Their caseloads are climbing. And because of COVID, they are going back to do work that should have been done during COVID, but we weren't here. So there's quite a load of testing to be done. There's a lot of coordination to be done. So Stacy Busick, our Director of Student Services, wrote the IDEA grant, annual grant we have, and added this position in as a possible opportunity for us to help that out in the middle school. So we received this grant and this is our suggestion to use it. And again, it's not unbudgeted position. It's also a grant-based position. So there's an understanding that it's a short-term fix for a bigger problem.
Okay, Jen?
How is the fact that this position is grant funded going to affect the applicant pool? I know as a biologist, I've multiple times looked at positions and been like, grant funded. Yeah, no way am I depending on NIH. So that's my concern, is that because it is a grant funded position without a real possibility of renewal, at least at the moment, that people will hesitate to apply.
So initially, you don't advertise these as grant funded. It may come up in the conversation, but I'm concerned about even getting applicants.
Right,
First of
yeah,
all,
that's what
I'm a
I'd
little
be concerned
I
about.
can't even get people to serve lunch right now.
Right.
But I'm concerned about applicants, and that's why the carryover is important for us to be able to hire this next year if we have to. We'll still be able to use the money. But it's a valid question, and to tip my hat a little bit, I'm asking principals to look differently at the resources, the people resources they have, so that we can put some qualified people into places where I feel like we need to bolster them.
Thank you.
What do we envision doing after this position if we still have the need? Coming to the school committee and asking to put it in the budget?
Well, I think in each budget process, you get the opportunity to look at what you have. So as you kind of look around your house and you look at the things that you're using and not using, and as you know, I'm in every school quite often, and seeing things and hearing things and talking to principals and talking to teachers gives us a better opportunity to build a better budget and something that can focus in areas that we might be missing. I mean, over time, in the past few years, you know, we weren't looking at support staff, what type of support staff we have, where they are, what they're doing. And now suddenly you come out of this kind of hibernation period, and then you're back in, and people are trying to just plug all the holes now. And the biggest hole we have right now is really a short-term need to help with the special ed tasks. Special ed teachers spend a whole heck of a lot of time outside of the kind of classroom support work they do, working on goals for kids, developing IEPs, having the IEP meetings, doing the testing, both annual and triennial testing, and that's a massive load right now for our special ed teachers, especially at the middle school level.
Are we going to have a motion for this?
Yep.
Sorry. I move that we add a 1.0 FTE special education teacher as funded by the IDEA grant discussed in the agenda.
Second.
All right, second by Michelle Bailey. Any further discussion? No? All right, all those in favor? And that vote is unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, I don't think we have any financial updates, is that right?
Nope.
Okay, so next we are on to policy and our regular review of the face coverings policy and current COVID statistics.
So as you can see, the cases are up slightly. I mean, one in Hamilton, up by one in Wenham, and then the 14-day total positive test is up to 23 from 17. So those are the latest numbers. I'll get tomorrow some newer numbers. I don't know where cases are going up and down or not, but we'll find out tomorrow. And then we had a little bump at Winthrop last week with 3 cases, student cases, and then one at the Cutler, based on our local district positive cases. And then the pool testing continues to be roughly around the same, 129 pools, and then those 3 positive tests that came up in our pool testing. Sometimes we get positive cases that are not picked up in our pool testing, so a child or family may figure it out at home, test their child, and call in and say, you know, my kid's positive. So sometimes they'll get it that way. It's not necessarily always picked up with the pool testing. And then the vaccination percentages are the same. They're not due to be updated again until next week.
I actually had a question about the vaccination percentages.
Yeah.
You averaged the student numbers and the staff numbers just straight across. You added the two and divided by 2.
Correct.
But shouldn't that be a weighted average, since we have many more students than we do faculty, just to be more accurate? I don't think it's going to change the fact that we're still going to be above 80% in the high school.
Yeah.
But it will drop the middle school numbers to be something that is more reflective of what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could do it either way. I mean, it's just a determination to make, you know, decide which way you want to go. We'll go either way. It doesn't.
I was just thinking a weighted average is more representative than a straight up average in terms of what's actually happening in the school.
And I would guess on a weighted average, you'd probably see an impact on the middle school more than the high school, only because of the number of sixth graders. So I don't think you'd see a very big impact on the high school number.
Yeah. No, I think that's where you're going to see the
I can do it
impact
either way or both. It doesn't.
Yeah, if we
fairly
could do a
simple
weighted average,
calculation.
I think that's more accurate.
Well, either a weighted average or
Why
just
would it-
a total average of all humans in the
Why
building.
wouldn't it just be a straight average?
Yeah.
Well, because you have, you might have 20 staff, of which 90% are vaccinated, and 200 kids, of which 80% are vaccinated. I'm pulling numbers
But
out.
why wouldn't you just divide by 220 then?
Yeah, I would just add all
Yeah,
the
you
two
could
numbers
divide
together
by
and
Yeah,
divide
you
it.
don't need to weight the average by
But
percent.
what's happening here is we're adding,
It's wrong.
yeah, two averages, and you can't do that.
It is wrong, yeah.
Yeah.
It's mathematically incorrect, yes.
Yeah, or, combine them all into a single group.
Right. Is that possible to do? Take the raw number and
Oh, yeah.
do that?
Either way. Simple.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I have a couple of questions. As this is obviously starting to come to a head with, a lot of interest from parents, interest from students, and even the new, guidelines saying that, children from 5 to 11 can now start getting vaccines. These numbers are going to change. I'd like to know our role in that. These parents are coming to us and saying, well, we meet this 80% threshold that, DESE has put out that we can actually apply for a waiver. How does that affect us where our middle school and our high school are actually one building?
Yeah.
And then 2, how does that affect us where if we did go for, to try to ask for an override, the way I understand HIPAA, if one parent said, of an unvaccinated child, said that they were uncomfortable with having their children's medical, medical information released, right? So by being unvaccinated, having to wear a mask, then we'd be in violation of the HIPAA, right? So I'm actually curious as to, and I'm sorry if that sort of question came out wrong. It was more clear in my head than as soon as I opened my mouth, it sort of got jumbled up. But how, as a district, have other districts gone through this? How have they gotten around it where, there are students right now that are unvaccinated, and, even though we're giving students a choice, would theoretically be giving students a choice, how is that not a violation? Or, how would we get around of that being a violation of a student's HIPAA rights who would be still wearing a face mask?
Anna, can I ask a question too?
Oh.
So the only school that I've heard that has a waiver so far is Hopkinton, and I know that you have calls with the
Can you just put your mic
yeah,
closer?
I know that
can't hear
Eric has calls with the DESE. Do you know of other districts besides Hopkinton that have done this?
So the only one I'm aware of that's actually made the move is Hopkinton.
Okay.
There are 18 and rising, according to our source at DESE, attestations in. They're not applications for exemptions. They're just a form that says, I, Eric Tracy, Superintendent of Schools, certify that this building, whatever the high school, is at 87%. So that's kind of the easy part. We submit that 48 hours, they kind of check a box and say, okay, Hamilton Wenham has filed their attestation. That's kind of the easy part. I think the piece we want to understand is the HIPAA only applies to medical personnel. So what I'm understanding about Hopkinton's process is because they've asked kids to bring in a permission slip and a copy of their vaccination, that they're able to use that information from parents to determine kind of who's who, rather than I can't go to the nurse and say, give me all the people that are vaccinated. But the nurses can reach out and say, okay, we have, I'm going to send an email to 5 people today who haven't met the standard. So the HIPAA violation is generally for medical personnel, and that's one of the things our nurses fear, like, is they don't want to violate HIPAA by giving out that information. So I think to be able to get around that is the Hopkinton move kind of covers that, and certainly I would explore that a little more.
Does it, right? Because it's basically an opt-in situation, and you would need faculty to be aware to actually police the policy, right? And so if you had one, again, all it takes is one to say, I'm not comfortable turning in this permission slip. Theoretically, it's, I don't want to use the term the bad apple that spoils the bunch, but I'm very, very leery on sort of being able to say, like, oh, well, this is all great, and because there's a lot going on, and you don't know, everybody's story, and I mean, I was sitting here choking on my gum in my mask. I hate what, you know what I mean? We all hate wearing these masks. It's something I get, but at the same time, that there's so much more than sort of me personally, and then the 10 of us and or 12 of us in this room. When we start sort of bringing it to scale, and again, I mean, we might only be talking about a handful of kids that can't for one reason or another, and how are we making sure that we're taking care of them?
Is that something, David, that we should just refer to the attorney?
That's why I'm sort of bringing it up. I'd feel
feedback?
much better if we can get some sort of solid, you know what I mean? How Hopkinton does it, I don't care. I care about Hamilton, and I want to make sure we're doing the best for all of our students.
We have heard from students, we've heard from members of the community, but I think we really need to do a full school district survey.
We've also heard from teachers.
Yeah, we did.
And
We've also
teachers,
heard from
yeah, I
teachers,
forgot that.
although we haven't discussed that in this meeting yet.
Sorry, say that again, Michelle?
Although we haven't discussed that in the meeting yet.
Right,
So the public doesn't know what we've heard from teachers.
right. Michelle Horgan?
Is it possible to apply for the waiver but not take action, or have it not be binding, meaning, so it gives us an opportunity to survey and I appreciate the parents that were here and the 35 households that signed the letter. There's still an additional 200 to 300 other families in the high school that we haven't heard from, so I think we got the teachers, we heard from part of the student body, but we need to hear from the parents. But I think if we could start the process, and it gives us more information, so then when it does come time.
Just for clarification, so people, the public know, there's 3 layers to our process here. There's the Department of Education layer, which is the mask mandate for all. There's the attestation form. Said it 40 times today, I still can't get it right. Attestation form that any district who can attest that they're over the 80% can submit to DESE, and then that just basically drops it down to the local level decision making, which is here. We have a policy in place, so that's how it would kind of drop through the NARVA would drop through the process. I can file it tomorrow, and it still has to be. It's still a local decision on what to do next, and that's covered by our current policy. I do think it's important for us to kind of lay out, kind of map this out. And I think that's something that I can do for this group, is kind of lay this out, like, here's a process, because I think it's important for us to put this out there to say, we're thinking of doing this, we're gonna take these particular steps, and then here's how we plan to do it. And that's probably where the better discussion lies, how we pull this off. So I just feel like it's hard for kids to swallow. When you talk to kids, they're like, I did what I was supposed to do. I went and, I isolated, I wear a mask, I get pool tested. So I would suggest that we put the attestation in tomorrow. We wait, we probably find out Tuesday, I would guess. But also give me the opportunity to lay out a plan with some guideposts to say, let's, I'll back up to Hopkinton. Hopkinton is in a trial for 3 weeks. And then they're going back to masks, and then review the data, and then make their next steps. I don't see why we shouldn't do that, only because it is frustrating. I met with many of the people sitting here and many others, and talked to a few people on the phone. It's hard to say, well, we'll just keep pushing it, next meeting. I think it's important for us to put together a plan to say, here's a plan, here are some guidelines that we can discuss here, together, but also it avoids the, okay, what are we gonna do next, and then put that off for 2 more weeks, and then it's December, then we're in January. So just my recommendation, I think it's time to make some forward motion on this.
Particularly since ages 5 to 11 can now be vaccinated. That makes a big difference.
Michelle Bailey?
So Eric, I had said that I was interested in knowing the percentage of students that are pool testing, because I'm there, I'm ready to vote. But there are mitigation strategies available to us, and one of those is if people take off their masks, we want to know that there aren't people with COVID, and the way we know that is we have a high percentage of people participating in pool testing. So I just was curious as to how many people or what percent are pool testing.
I can give you exact. And these are based on our current numbers. So when you're looking at pools, I'm gonna use the high school as an example. The 1025 to 1028 pools at the high school, there were 9 pools. And the pools at the high school are either 9 or 10 people.
So we only have 90 approximate
so
people out of the
approximately 90
500
people
in the building?
Students and staff, so it's not just one group or the other.
So it's less than 20% of the people participating?
Yep. And then if you compare that with any of the elementary schools, in the middle school, they run an average of 29 pools at 8. They put a smaller number in the elementary pools and the middle school pools, according to our nurses.
So we heard from students that they were interested in having not to wear masks, and that they're willing to pool test. So I would be interested in if we could advertise that we need to get those pool testing numbers up.
And I think it's important to build into the plan, like, here are the expectations that we have for students or parents or whatever. And I think being as open as possible. The kids are, in talking to kids, they're like, yeah, we'll do it. A lot of kids don't do pool testing at the high school because they're vaccinated. Like, I'm already vaccinated. Like, they feel comfortable with that. So I think that's important to note. But I also think they would step up to the charge to say, okay, if we want to let one mitigation strategy go, can we back it up with another? And the pool testing right now is not going to cost us anything. We could increase it to 30 pools, and it's not going to cost us anything more. It's just a matter of just getting the supplies for it.
Well, I think, I'll share my thought. I do think having some sort of roadmap about what are the trigger points here, because I do think the ambiguity is frustrating. When I've heard from parents, that's one of the main tenets is like, but what will it take? And so I think it would be good for us to define what the thresholds are. I agree completely with Michelle that level of participation in pool testing is a non-starter for me. If you want to take off your masks, there has to be something to give in. And I say that because even though the overall percentage is over 80, at 85%, that's still 15 kids out of 100 that are not vaccinated. It's not like it's 2%, it's 15%. And, to use a grading scale, okay, our high school students are getting a B in terms of vaccination. I would feel much better about it if they were getting an A, to be honest. I understand the state is set at 80%. I think we can do better than that. I really do. So I would like personally to see that number be even higher. And I think it has to come with the additional caveat of we have to up the pool testing, because I think as much as we feel like vaccination is the silver bullet, the number of kids that have crossover from middle to high and high to middle or elementary to middle, we know that the elementary parents are just starting to come online. I myself was up between 3 and 4 all morning trying to find appointments. That is not going to be an overnight thing happening. So I think the reality is, I would like to see us have a little bit closer compliance to a higher threshold, and I would like to see pool testing really increase to do that. And I am a little bit, the numbers are going up, the efficacy is there. I personally, and this is my personal opinion, I think the masks have proven to be one of the few things that really has been effective. And at this point, we're all there. Yes, we're annoyed by them. None of us enjoy them, but I think we're used to them. So as much as I do think we should return to normal as quickly as possible, of all the things we're doing, it's actually really almost the easiest. So I'm totally open to setting a path to making a change, but I think it has to come with some additional incentives, and I would overall like to see the numbers be higher. I really would. So.
I would also like numbers to be set so that if we get a major breakthrough COVID case, like say, I don't know, I would have to ask somebody who knows more about public health than I do, but set a threshold number that parents know, and if we hit this, we go back to masks.
No, I agree. I would agree. I mean, I think we just have to be more open and out front. Like, here are the guideposts, here are the reaction points, rather than saying, we'll talk about it in 2 weeks, and we'll talk about it in 2 weeks. And I think that way we can get the input from the parents. I can easily survey the parent population over the next few days to get that information. I think it's, it's certainly doable, and I would guess, given the pressures from parents right now to say, hey, let's move forward, they would participate and get involved fairly quickly. So I'm not too worried about that. I think that's what people need. Like, okay, what are the signposts? What are our kind of goal points? If we hit this, then this happens. If this, and I think that's, at least people would feel better about that.
I agree.
It's important to know that the high school kids have jumped their vaccination rate 10% in the past 2 months. So they were at 79, they're at 89 now.
85, but.
Michelle.
Yeah. Michelle Bailey?
So, not at the last meeting, but the meeting before, I think David and I both walked away with the same impression, which is that the middle school and the high school are one building. So how can we attest to the percentage being at that rate if they're one building? So in emailing with you, Eric, I think there maybe was some misunderstanding of statements that you made, because I certainly was under the impression that we were at a non-starter position because the buildings were one. But I think I'm hearing now you're saying the buildings are 2.
So if you go back to last meeting, my kind of caveat was, one thing we need to talk about and think about is whether or not, I think I talked about other school systems too, there are buildings 1 or 2. And you look at the crossover points, there are 2 crossover points, one being the library, and then the other being possibly the gym. The gym not so much, because they're fairly well separated. And most of the high school kids' classes are outside right now, but the library is the key point where kids cross over. And other than that, middle school kids are in the middle school, high school kids are in the high school. You don't have a lot of back and forth between the actual grade levels in the buildings. I think it's actually, we try to limit that as much as possible. But the 2 points to think about in the discussion is the library and then the gym. I think the easy piece to that is you make zones that are, okay, these are mask zones until we get the numbers up for the 6th graders. And I think that's, and it's also, there's not a ton of kids in the library. So there's also
Well,
a
unless
limiting
there's no
factor
subs
there.
for the day.
It's just easy to spread out the library. It's just such a big space. I mean, it was formerly a gym, so I think it's easier to set the library in a more spread out fashion and say, wearing masks until we get to a certain point, which we should be open and upfront with for our 6th graders.
Okay.
So I think will happen fairly quickly.
Yeah, I just think that was a big misconception by both of us, that we had to count it as one building. So we're at it where we did not believe we were at the threshold because of that. It seems like you're saying we are at the threshold for just the high school. So, okay.
Yes.
So can I make a motion?
Sure.
I would make a motion that Superintendent Tracy submit an attestation form to the DESE that the Hamilton-Wenham Regional High School has reached an 80% vaccination rate amongst the people in the building.
Is there a
Second.
Second by Jen Carr. Any further discussion?
I would just say, I'm kind of uncomfortable voting on this tonight because we didn't tell the public we were going to vote on it. It doesn't say vote, just for the record. It does say review, but we review it every 2 weeks, so I'm just not 100% comfortable. Just want to put that out there.
Open meeting.
I'm not necessarily 100% opposed or for, but I wish that we had stated that we would vote on the attestation and that we would have put it as an exhibit and that we would have let more people comment and let more people be involved.
But we aren't making the decision. We're just telling DESE that the high school has reached the 80% threshold.
Yeah. Oh, no, exactly. I'm just uncomfortable with the fact that we're voting on something when we didn't say we were voting.
You're concerned about the lack of notice.
Yeah.
So I would
Go ahead, Michelle.
say it's a gray area because it does say we are going to review the face covering policy. It doesn't say we're going to review the attestation policy or whatever, and we're not actually voting on a policy. However, the open meeting law has always said if something is on an agenda for discussion, you can assume that there could be a vote. But I agree that it's a little unclear because it doesn't we're not actually making a motion about the policy. We're making a motion about submitting data. Yeah.
And I want to just be very clear that we can apply for the attestation and it's not binding.
Well, we haven't changed the policy.
We still have a policy.
We still have to change the policy. Okay.
Okay, so there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No? All right, so again, the motion is to direct the superintendent to submit to the DESE that the Hamilton-Wenham Regional High School has met the 80% threshold. All right, all those in favor? That's 5. All those opposed? That's 1. So the motion passes by a vote of 5-1. Okay. Next on the agenda. Oh, wait, sorry. More?
Yeah.
But wait, there's more. There's more.
We left the discussion hanging a little bit about what
I agree.
next steps.
In terms of what?
Yeah, I think it's important to lay down a pathway, and I will take responsibility to do that and bring it back to the group to say, here are some kind of guideposts for us, and we can then look at that and pull and push it around as well as we can. I just think it's important to do that for everybody's sake.
And I think that's good. I also think one of the pieces of information we talked about is sort of the HIPAA legal compliance and asking about how that might work with council. The other thing I would be curious to know is just on a practical basis, and this is, we've heard from the teachers about how they feel about masks, but I would be curious to know in your scenario of how it would work mechanically, what does a day in the classroom look like with this in operation? And I'd be very curious to have that written up so that parents could understand what it looks like, but also I would really want the teachers to understand what that looks like, and then I would want to know what they felt about it.
And certainly, I would get their input as well. I mean, I think it's important. It's kind of a roadshow I got to do in the next week and a half to really talk to kids and get the word out. I want to do a survey of the parents so we have that data. You know, we have teacher data that shows the high school is 60-40. So they're kind of in that split zone there. That we have student data that's pretty overwhelming, and then the parent data is, I guess, the missing link, if you will, to see. And then I can follow up on the HIPAA question with attorney Mark Terry, and then really figure out the logistics of what it looks like. And it's, you know, it's one of those things. You have I think you have a better chance of having people understand what happens if we put a plan out there.
And sorry, I also think that we talked about, and I'm wondering if we actually need a motion on all these directives, although it sounds like we're in agreement, but Dr. Carr talked about sort of knowing what other triggers might be involving when we reverse, and I feel like we're heading dangerously into the territory of a chart and a flow chart and triggers and pivots again. I just feel it coming back, but
I just feel like parents are going to want to know, like, that we're not if we have to make the decision to go from unmasked back to masked, that they know why we're doing it and that we've set the goalpost in advance. I also think it's important to not just survey the high school. I think we need to survey the middle school and elementary schools as well, because our middle school students share common spaces, including buses and the library and gym. And
That's a good point about the buses, yeah.
well, but I think the masks, that's still a
to stay on
statewide
the bus,
requirement on
right?
buses, no
Federal
matter what.
requirement. That's
Yeah, so
yeah.
even if we weren't wearing masks in the building,
You have to
you'd
wear a
still have
mask
to
on a
wear a
bus.
mask on the bus. Okay.
And we have high school and middle school students that have younger siblings that are in grade school. And if they get exposed to somebody with COVID-19, they're exposing their siblings.
Right. Well, I think to Julia's point, I think, you know, and the analogy that came to my mind, the attestation is sort of like getting your driver's license. It doesn't mean you immediately start driving a car on the freeway. It simply means you have the credential, should you choose to use it, but you're not yet empowered to do so. So I think, to Julia's point, which I think is very wise, I think when we actually talk about changing the policy, I personally won't feel comfortable changing it until we have a lot more data about all these, the guideposts, the map, the process. I want to hear from the teachers about enforcement. And as a parent of a fourth grader, I definitely want to talk to elementary parents and understand how they think it might affect them in terms of the crossover. So I agree. I think there's a lot more information we need. Does the committee feel like we need to actually make a motion to empower the superintendent to do this? Do we have some consensus? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of head shaking.
I just want to add one other thing. I think it's important to note that I met with a good-sized group of people today to talk about it, and one of the things that they asked about is what some of the reasonable objective values that are set to remove the masks or to put them back on. So I think everybody's kind of on the same page. So that's why I'm saying if I have the opportunity to lay this out and get people to weigh in on, I'll put it out there publicly and just see where people stand. I think we'll have a better understanding of, you know, what our next step is, rather than saying, okay, let's wait till the next meeting and we'll talk about it again, and wait till the next meeting, and then it's March.
Well, I would perhaps caution, though, I wouldn't put it out publicly until we've had a chance to look at it, because the public will assume it's happening if you put it out there. So
that's exactly why I just voted against having this happen, right? Without any information, without actually letting parents know that we would actually be possibly voting on this. Now, granted, we have this on a standing agenda, so we can actively make maneuvers as quickly as possible, right? If this wasn't on our agenda, we would have to sit here and actually talk at the end of the meeting and actually put this on an upcoming agenda. The problem is, now we've actually voted to send something to DESE, to have DESE say, okay, you know what, you guys did meet the threshold, you guys can put together a plan to have your high school not wear masks anymore. Now our hand is actually forced. Whether or not you think it is, we can make a decision based off of that, but the parents who have now been, more vocal this past week or so, once they get that information, you think that's gonna let up, right? Do you think they're gonna actually want to step back, take things slowly and look objectively, right? And this is all without actually hearing from anyone else in the district.
Excuse me.
Yeah, but we
This-
can stand up to them if we need to. We can, I mean, we're all individuals and we can
But the problem
make our own
is,
decisions for ourselves.
Personally, I've gotten far more emails and texts and had people talk to me about keeping the mask policy than I have. As large as the group that they think has been compiled, there is far more. I'm sure this is gonna open the floodgates, so I'll be sure to go to in the morning and change my number, but we wanna make sure that we're looking at everything objectively and being able to stay within control of the situation, right? It's a hot button issue. It's very heated on both sides. And again, it's really hard to argue against it. We all, we hate wearing the stupid things. I get it, It really is hard to argue, like, now you gotta keep it on, but it's really tough when you're responsible for 1,600, people within a district. I'm sorry your son doesn't like it, ma'am, but I've got 1,599 other kids I have to worry about as well.
Well, to your point, I've also heard many more people saying they want us to keep the mask mandate, which is
Me
why
too.
I feel like before we actually change the policy, it has to be a very thorough, very deliberative process, and I know some people won't want to hear that. For me, the only thing that gives me comfort about the attestation is it's a bit pro forma. It's simply saying something that we all know is true, that is objectively measurable. All we're doing is submitting the piece of paper to say, look, the thing that we all know is true, and now is true. So to me, I'm okay with that, but I agree with you.
Logical. That's the
I know, I'm using
logical
logic.
explanation,
I always
which
get in trouble.
completely understand, right? But
Yeah, no, I think that's why the next step has to be very careful and very, very heavily noticed and with a lot of input, so.
I know last year during COVID, I wasn't a member of this committee, although I think you heard from me basically on a bi-weekly basis. But I remember what really bothered me about the back-to-school plan was that we didn't know what it was. We had no clue. It wasn't being communicated well. We just didn't know, and that was frustrating. So as a parent, I know I felt much better last year when I knew what the plan was, rather than it just being like, oh, well, we have a plan. That doesn't help me at all. Not, particularly as a scientist, it doesn't help me at all, because I'm a numbers person. I want to know step A, step B, step C, and what's going to happen if we hit step D and have to go back.
Yeah, but I think that's exactly what David is saying. The fact that we've just voted to fill out the attestation form means that we've signaled there's a plan to come back. And so now people think we are going to be planning to remove masks.
Well, we're going to develop a plan, yeah.
Well, I think that's always the plan.
Well,
At the end of the day, whether it's a year from now, 6 months from now, a month from now, the plan is always, hopefully, to remove masks. I think individually, we might all have different opinions about when that should happen and how that should happen. But I actually really I totally agree with you, Jen, about the frustration of the parents in terms of getting back to school. Because I was also one of those parents. And the fact that there was no articulated plan was really, it was almost like if there was a plan and I didn't agree with it, I could have almost stomached it and just said, okay, well, I don't really agree with it. But I love the idea, Superintendent Tracy, of creating some kind of roadmap and some kind of plan, and that will give us something at least to debate or to talk about or parents to comment on, or I think that will give us, we're just working kind of from a blank page here. So I think moving forward with the plan, and I completely understand what David is saying about optics and about PR and what's going to be the headline of the paper tomorrow. and what everyone's going to write about in the Facebook group. I completely understand. But I just think we need to, you know, stand firm that it's an attestation and it's not, we did not change the mask policy, and we're working potentially towards that. We don't know yet. We need more data.
Yep.
And I would like to see more, I would like to see evidence that there would be more encouragement of pooled testing as a mitigation strategy. If we remove one mitigation strategy, we need more, we need other mitigation strategies in
Well, I
place.
think if we wanted to, we could even put that into the new policy.
Yeah.
That in order to make this true, something else has to also be true on a local level. And to David's point, and maybe I've just become numb to it, but I think that on these issues, anything related to this, we know it's going to be contentious. We know it's going to be spirited. I think it's part of being on a school committee in COVID, whether we like it or not. And I think that that's why having more transparency here and more communication and more timeline and more notice, and really make sure that everyone understands exactly what is and is not in this policy or this plan or this, I mean, we just, to some degree, I feel like it is this obvious elephant. The plan is, the plan of society is to return to normalcy, which is a non-mask universe. The problems are, there are numerous barriers to that, but I think as a community, it should always be the goal to get back to normal without putting public health at risk. That is the issue, and I think that that's what we just need to really clarify for people within our power, so.
Another question then to ask the attorney might be, is it a HIPAA violation or any type of violation that we ask students, or we require that if you are a student who chooses to go unmasked, can we require that you sign up for pool testing? Because, I mean, if we're going to take away a mitigation strategy and add one in, we just have to make sure that that's legally okay to do.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I think it's important, too, to kind of lay down some of the ground rules, only because there are so many little things to work out. Like, you know, we're talking about kids that are vaccinated, unvaccinated. We're talking about locations. So all these kind of processes, I just don't want to wait until, you know, we get to a point where we say, okay, we're going to drop everything, but we got to hold on until we figure out what the processes are. So that's kind of that work I want to do behind the scenes and figure out. The superintendents are all having those conversations, so there's a big enough pool to draw from to reach out and say, okay, what are you guys planning? What are you looking at? I just don't want to wait and then all of a sudden be held up again. So I'll get the answers to those questions. I'll put together kind of a roadmap, and I think ultimately, you know, even I heard it today in the governor's press conference. You know, we're all working towards getting rid of the masks and getting back to some level of normalcy. So I think the vaccinations for the younger kids, we have, I don't know if you're familiar, you're aware, we just set up a booster clinic for the staff at the end of the day on next Friday for any staff member who wants boosters. And we'll continue to kind of monitor the 5 through 11 vaccination piece as well. Just so everybody's aware, our first message going out to parents tomorrow is we suggest you go to your pediatrician.
Right.
Not we're going to have this big, massive, you know, vaccination drive at the schools. There is some concern. We want parents to be with their kids, especially the little ones that may or may not have needle issues or whatever. But we also don't want to create negative intentions or even thought processes around our own nurses jabbing kids with needles that don't want to be jabbed with needles. So our first run is you know, at the suggestion of Rachel Lee in Hamilton, is tell people to go to their pediatrician. So that's going out, just so you know, tomorrow in my communication to parents.
Because they already know when they go to the pediatrician, they're going to get a shot.
Yeah, right. You don't want to not like the nurse for the next 4 years.
Right. Okay, before we move on, any other final comments on masks and policy? We've said it all for tonight? Okay. Switching gears, next up is the first reading of the duration of school committee meetings, file BE. So
The duration of the meetings.
I'll go ahead and start with this. So this has been we've been working on this for a while. Michelle Horgan and I started it, I don't know, maybe last May or even April. At the last last policy meeting, we took a vote on the language you see in front of you. It was a 3-0 unanimous vote of support to push this forward. So this would govern the length of our meetings and when we stop and when we start and how we proceed from there. So does anyone have any comments or questions on it?
My comment is on the second to last paragraph. Under no circumstances shall any school committee meeting continue past 11 unless there's a favorable motion. In the previous two paragraphs, you indicate simple majority and 2/3.
Mm-hmm.
So is a favorable motion a 2/3 majority or is it a simple majority?
It's a simple majority.
Can we clarify that? Just say simple majority so it's not.
We could. Any typical motion to suspend the rules not only requires a simple majority, so it's sort of embedded in the language, but I mean.
Well, it's just that you bring up two different types of majority in the previous two paragraphs. So I think the term favorable majority in the third paragraph is kind of ambiguous.
A favorable motion. So you would suggest adding favorable motion by a simple majority made to suspend the rules?
Well, I think
But
it's
that
actually
doesn't
kind of
make
confusing.
sense.
Because the 2/3
Right.
is like every half hour, every half hour, every half hour, but then all of a sudden it hits 11 and then we don't need 2/3?
Right.
That's why I asked the
was
question.
confusing to me.
Right, because to me, a favorable motion follows the previous two rules.
Well, the previous two rules, though, contradict one.
I would just eliminate that 11 p.m. because you already have the 2/3, 2/3, 2/3.
I agree.
So remove entirely the clause that says under no circumstances?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fair.
I mean, that's just for me because it already says 3 hours, and then we would have to vote 2/3 to go half an hour after.
Increments. Initially, I think the first draft, Michelle Horgan, correct me if I'm wrong, it was midnight at one point, and then it was shortened to 11 with the idea that, you know, that's a 4-hour meeting if we start at 7, but
It's a 5-hour. Oh, 11 is a 4-hour meeting, yeah. No, I think you have that in the policy already without the time being in there because you're going to be voting in the after 3 hours. So unless our meeting starts at like 11 o'clock at night, you know, it's not going past midnight without some sort of vote.
Somehow both redundant and contradictory.
Right.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
would just take that out.
Other than that, though, I'm fine with it.
I'm going to defer to you, Michelle Bailey. Do we need a motion to take it out since it came out of policy that way, or could we just take
you
it out
come
and bring it
here.
back for another reading?
You come here to get feedback, then
Yeah.
you go, then you, if you have feedback, then policy just reviews it and brings it back for a second reading. That's what the purpose of the first reading is,
Okay.
is just to get feedback.
Okay. Any other comments or feedback on the policy?
Hey, I hear there's going to be some openings to run for the school committee next year, and you're now guaranteed shorter meetings. So for all of you.
I know, where was this policy when I started on the school committee?
Come on
Jeez.
back.
7-hour meetings.
Bucher at midnight.
I need to.
Okay. Well, we will bring that back to policy and bring it back to you. The other thing we just wanted to provide an update on is we had a really good, productive meeting on the flag policy. We have draft language that needs to be typed up and given to new district council, and then policy will have a second reading of it at our next meeting on November 22nd. I expect that, assuming it passes legal muster, that we would likely move that forward from there. So I know that something that's been sort of timely and lingering, but policy had a really good conversation, and I think we're in a spot to have something for the full committee to look at probably at the meeting after November 22nd. And that is it for policy. Superintendent's report.
Okay, a few things. I'll follow up on our goals as we do. The portrait of the graduate, the last meeting had to be canceled because we had no power. Mike Nicholson and I sat in the parking lot until 4 o'clock and said, what do you think? Should we wait and wait? And we were watching the power maps, but we ended up having to cancel that. So we're going to reschedule that. That may bump into January depending on the schedule of our December meetings, if we can adjust them or not. DEI, last night, I was involved, actually Michelle Bailey was also with us in the equity visioning session at the high school with parents, students, administrators, community members, with Regis, Regis Shields of Equity Journey Partners, and went through the process for 3 hours of figuring out what things look like, and then they'll take that information back and come back to us with kind of, here's a compilation of everything you all discussed in different groups. So there were different affinity groups, students, parents, administrators at elementary level, community people. So it was good. It was really interesting to be able to go through that process and see the perspectives. The perspectives were in a lot of ways similar, and then in other ways you're like, oh, I didn't think of that. Or we had opportunity to ask each group questions and things as we built our responses. So that work will continue. The leadership team that consists of Stacy Busick, Kristen Lazaro, Liz Lovell, and Ryan Raw, they're continuing to meet weekly with Regis Shields of Equity Journey Partners to plan out the professional development. As you know, we have the next Friday is a professional day for teachers. No students will be in school, and that work will occur in different levels. In the morning, it'll be at the elementary level, where Regis and several of her colleagues will be working with smaller groups of elementaries. Then they'll flip it into the afternoon and do the high school and middle school levels in the same way. That'll be the second time they've worked with our staff. The first one was a Zoom to kind of gather some general information and give them some definitions of equity and diversity and things like that. So that's happening. And then we'll move into, on that November 12th agenda, to examine our social identities, how our social identities impact how we feel and move through the world, learn to understand how privilege operates to normalize some identities over others, and then to understand how social identity manifests in the school, in the classroom, and encourage empathy. So that's a little bit of an overview of what they'll be doing. Teaching and learning structures, elementary, they are continuing in their data level meetings now. They're doing individual data meetings. I've sat in on 2 now, and fascinating to see the data, listen to those conversations, because it involves classroom teachers, special ed teachers, administrators, literacy coaches, teaching assistants. So all of those people are involved in these data meetings. And then at the secondary level, as you saw tonight, they completed the curriculum audit, was really part of that MTSS kind of groundwork, if you will. Did the presentation, and then they're looking for a common data collection tool for inclusive practices. As you may remember, we were trying to reinvigorate the inclusive practices from before we fell off the cliff of COVID. And they've successfully done that by meeting with staff in the beginning of the school year, putting it back out there, having individual department discussions about it. And now they're working with the curriculum leaders who are evaluating this year to come up with ways, kind of agreements on, okay, what does it look like and how do we collect that data now? So they're working on that as a piece of that structure. And then the World Language Study Group. The student, parent, staff surveys were finalized by the team, sent out on 9/27, and then they're collecting other information now from surrounding schools. Schools that are all around us, so they're reaching out and trying to get that information as well, and they'll continue to work towards that. I met with them the other day to see where they were, and they will hit the deadline so that we can have a recommendation as we start the budget process. So that December 1st meeting, I think it's the second, I'm not positive, but I think whatever that first December meeting is, we'll have something at that point, a recommendation from that group. And then the facilities group that's working on the athletics field. So, you know, the piece of the turf group, if you will, the group met this past Monday, kicked off some of the work for facilities master planning. There's a matrix of components and let me back up. Athletic Facilities Improvement Working Group met with reps from the Gale Associates to define scope and goals on Monday. And they basically came back to us and said, here's where we were, where do you want to be? So we made a few adjustments, including there's an addition of tennis courts and an addition of some work to be done, I think turf work on the softball field. So Gail met with the group, we went through the processes, they're going to take that back, make those adjustments, come back with the group. They also have to review the wetland delineations that are on the original map, because those could change. I mean, we've got enough rain to move the wetlands all over the place, but so they'll be doing that work. They'll do, you know, we'll also break it into separate groups. The group itself will break out into fundraising, financing, schedule and phasing, athletic specs, and then communications. We think we'll be able to get more done in learning about the processes of, you know, what we need. You know, both communities are looking for the school department to put some skin in the game, so we need to come up with a strategy for that, and we'll bring a recommendation to this group at some point in the near future. Going backwards, the working group for facilities master planning kicked off on 10/21. There's a matrix of major components and life expectancy. So major components are univents that are in classrooms or rooftop ventilator units and things like that. Those are major components. We had an opportunity to work with a group through the town of Hamilton, the Green Spaces grant that they got. The company had came back and gave us an overview of here's where we think your life expectancy is, and as you can probably guess, it's not very far out. In some cases, we're beyond it. In many cases, we're beyond it. So they gave us a really good overview and a breakdown of what things cost, the replacement costs, et cetera. And certainly those conversations will continue because they need to go in tandem with the possibility of, you know, the Cutler project coming alive at some point, and then the turf field project. Those are all big issues. And then we have that emergency SOI for the high school roof that was recently denied, but we'll reapply for that just as we've done every year. So that's it for the goal groups that are working right now.
Any comments or questions?
Are you going to talk about the school attorney now?
What was that? I didn't hear.
I think she asked about talking about the school attorney now. I was asking if there are any comments about the goals or the
Report?
The report. Thank you.
Okay.
That's the word.
Yep.
I do have a question a little bit because we sort of skipped ahead into the athletics facilities working group. So if it would please the committee, I think I want to group 11D up into this since we've sort of, you're already talking about it now.
You're on that, Michelle, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Michelle's
Michelle's
on
on
that
there.
one. I'm looking at the meeting notes that were submitted, and I see that Michelle Horgan made a motion, which is exciting that you moved something. But the group talked about authorizing Tom to engage in the proposal of phase 1 with the money. For some reason,
It's confusing, and I apologize to that. So when Tom put out the RFP to Gale, they were the only ones that submitted, which makes sense because we did have history with them. They came in though at $86,000, which was well above what we had budgeted at $60,000. So knowing that, Tom asked that let's just move ahead with phase 1, $20,000 with an additional $5,000 to incorporate the wetlands delineation. So we approved Tom engaging Gale at the amount of $25,000, below the $60,000 that we had set aside for this project. Phase 2 and 3 will come along later on. We'll figure out how to fund those. But for right now, we wanted to get the project going and keep momentum growing. So, yeah, so I apologize for the minutes being a little murky.
well, my only question is, for some reason, and maybe my memory is incorrect and I need to go back to the motion when we created the group, I was under the impression that this group, if they did have financial requests, would somehow or other be making a recommendation to the full committee. Did we actually authorize the working group to financially allocate things like this?
I don't know.
It's in the budget.
The money is already in the budget?
Yes, because we approved it back in the capital
Okay,
budget.
so it's not new money going out?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yep.
No, but it looks like at some point we'll be looking for some new money.
Perhaps,
At
yes.
some point.
Why
That's, yes.
that was smart in breaking it up into phases.
Well,
so
Tom
it
was,
does-
Tom,
Yeah,
Tom
yeah.
was smart. Not me, Tom.
There's a
Yes.
lot of smart people involved. I just want to make sure I understood the authority clearly, that it wasn't new money that somehow or other
Correct.
needed to come
Oh,
back
yeah,
to
no,
us.
no, we would never do that. Yeah,
Okay.
we don't. Right.
Do you have any other updates from that group that you wanted to share?
I will say that it is I'm excited for this, and I'm sure this has been said over the last 10, 12 years, but there is momentum. It's a great group of people, well represented from both towns and recreation committees, CPCs, school side, and a good group of people that are working towards getting this project come to fruition. So it's exciting. So,
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you for continuing to serve on that. Okay, next I think we can talk about the school district attorney.
I just wanted everybody to be aware that at last meeting, we talked about engaging in bringing on Merrick and O'Connell, specifically Mark Terry, who is our main contact. We have sealed that up and signed an agreement with him. I met with him on Tuesday for an hour and a half or so to kind of get to know you type of thing, and he is on board and ready to go. So we already have a whole bunch of questions from tonight we can send to him. So,
Great.
and he's also already spent some time familiarizing himself with the things that are going on in our district, including the regional agreement. So
Did he
we're
have
ready
any
to
input
roll.
on that? Did he have any input on that, or is he thinking about it? The regional
Sorry, say that
agreement?
again?
Did he have any input on the regional agreement, or is that something he's thinking about?
No, what I said to him was that this group would probably, based on the request from Hamilton and the discussions we've had here, was to request specific, like he doesn't have all the pieces. He only has the regional agreement. I think it's important for him to see the Hamilton request.
Okay.
But he's willing to give feedback. He's definitely willing, and he's done this in a number of regional districts, so this is not new work for him as well.
That's great.
Okay, any other comments on the superintendent's report? No? Okay, next up, committee reports, capital and financial planning. Dr. Carr.
Yeah, so we haven't met since our last meeting, but we do have an upcoming meeting on Wednesday, November 10th at 6 p.m. And then after that, we have the tri-board meeting.
Okay. Yeah.
Was I not talking?
No, I was just confirming the date because I thought we had the tri-board meeting and then you mentioned the tri-board meeting. So keep going. I was just making sure we had the date right.
And so
Anna was
I'll have
jumping
more
the
to
gun.
report after those two meetings.
Okay. Have we gotten any confirmation about the tri-board meeting?
So I just got an email from Wenham, because there's some confusion, I think, on the Hamilton side, but we had a meeting with all of the chair people at the central office and all agreed to that date. And Vinny's actually away for a few days, so we'll end up posting that meeting on Monday,
Okay.
so that we have it. in
Have we
time.
gotten confirmation?
Wednesday, right?
It's
Wednesday.
It's Wednesday the
Okay.
10th.
Okay, you just said Monday, so I was confused.
No, I said to post it. It's
Oh.
it's
To
a
post
public
it.
meeting.
Oh, it's
But the meeting is definitely happening with all the boards?
That is the intention, and that's
Okay.
my conversation. And I have a second, actually, meeting with the town administrator at Wenham tomorrow, so I'll just underscore that. But he emailed me the other day saying, hey, we're on, right? So everybody believes we're on, and it's just a matter of getting the posting done.
Okay.
Since I've never done this before, can I get some help putting together, or I don't know if we're responsible for putting together the agenda for the tri-board meeting, but if we are, can I get some help?
No, it'll be Vinny and
Yeah.
Eric
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Okay.
Joe and Ryan and, yeah.
And then
They'll
it's,
do it.
it's,
Thank you.
it's all members from all three boards, so it's, and it, is the FinCom coming too, or no, it's just the tri-boards?
No,
No, they're one of the three.
Are we doing
Select
that?
board, the FinCom, and then us from each.
it's 5
town.
boards, but it's
Yeah, it's 5.
Yeah,
3 categories.
right, Okay.
Are we doing
Because
that?
it's funky to say Quint board.
Are we doing that via Zoom then? Because I think one of the select committees, if I'm not,
Wenham still meets
Meets via
remotely because of the size of their room, but that should be something we should check. Maybe they do want to, maybe the whole group does want to meet remotely.
And Hamilton does a hybrid option, sort of like what we do, but different. I guess the reason I was just confirming, did we get the date confirmed with the Hamilton Select Board? Because I was in the BOS meeting on Monday, and they seem to think it's not on the 10th.
I'm waiting for a response from them. Michelle gave me a heads up the other day on that, so I'm not 100%. But
Yeah, Dana and I were both in that meeting.
All the chair people met with us, and everybody was on board. So we just wanted to double.
Yeah, Dana and I were both in the select board meeting on Monday, and they repeatedly referred to a different date. So that's why I want to confirm that. Okay.
We did give them Vinny's
Hamilton.
whole calendar for the budget cycle at that meeting when we met, so everybody has the date layout and structure. So I said I'm meeting with Ryan tomorrow to double check.
Okay. Okay, policy subcommittee, you just heard some of the things that we worked on. Our next meeting is November 22nd, and we actually mapped out our meeting dates from now through April. So we have a pretty regular schedule now on Mondays and have some good goals set out to try to actually get through the rest of the policy review. So we are making some progress. Negotiations? Any updates from negotiations?
So the custodians union, their representative has changed, and so we are waiting for their new representative to get on and get familiar with what's going on so that we can begin our negotiations with them. And the head of the custodians union is aware of that and is fine. So we're just delaying to give them an opportunity to prepare for negotiations. So.
Okay. Any other comments from committees? No? So Dana's chair report was that she sends her regards and regrets. I'm sure she's having a great time at the conference while we are here. The one thing she did want to remind everyone is that Hamilton is having a master planning visioning session on Saturday. It's at Miles River from 9:30 to 12 this coming Saturday. So, I'm sorry, Saturday, November 13th. My mistake, November 13th. So if anyone would like to participate, they are welcome to do so. That was all she had for her chair's report. So next up are topics for future meetings.
I would like to hear more about how the committee evaluating the MTSS program is going to complete their data analysis, and particularly what statistical tests they're going to do to compare the first set of data and the second set of data. I just don't want them to come into a final presentation and me to come back and say, what statistics did you run? And them not to have a plan for running something.
Are you talking about the student level work they're doing now? Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Anything else?
And I'm sorry, I have not referred to the working plan, but are we going to hear a report on MCAS, or are we going to assume that that was just a mulligan and not look at that data?
I'll do whatever you want. I can do a report.
Yeah, I mean, just traditionally, when we had MCAS data, we got a report sometime in November, but I don't know how much time we want to spend on it, if you feel it's a valuable exercise or not. So, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I
mean, I know it was a weird thing. It was weird testing. I know everybody's down, so I don't know if we want to talk about that, or if you want to say, no, traditionally we would have this, but the time to put this together may or may not be worth it, because the data.
I think it's important to put the data out there, and there's nothing to hide. It's public data. It's also something that we still need to look at the leadership team level as talking points, because as we go through, for example, the work that we're doing at the literacy level, we can see some of those impacts next year.
Yep.
And then we just have to keep all those kind of oddities in mind, like kids that took it from home, kids that didn't take it, kids that only took a certain portion. So that's what we're trying to figure out now. They actually broke it down for us, like who took it where and when. So that's helpful. But yeah, I think it's worth putting out there. It's
I would be interested in seeing it just as a comparison to how we've historically done, and just to see what last year actually looked like. I share.
Well, I don't
it's
think
just
about
like-
what we've historically done, but maybe compare it to the state.
Yeah,
Average for this
I would
past
just
year.
caution a historical, a vertical
Yeah, I wouldn't do
comparison.
that.
I would say let's focus on this last round of data as unusual as it was. I think it's still worth
Yeah.
looking at because
I think that's the importance of having this, right? It's
Yeah.
not important to actually release the data because the data's already out there. It's to explain it.
Right.
The fact that, like, yes, we are down, but it was also, we're trying to test the same benchmark, but we didn't actually have the same, school year that actually leads to those benchmarks and what that means. And here's, where we're starting from now to try and go from there and, assuring everybody that we understand what's going on, explaining to them what's going on and how we're gonna move on.
Yeah. So in the interest of not talking about it too much more, it sounds like there is interest for that to be on a next agenda, so.
I don't know.
Okay, anything else?
I don't know,
on my
Michelle can
to-do
probably
list.
tell me whether this is in the school district's purview. But I was really surprised when I found out that the middle school health class is teaching an absence-only policy.
I don't know
Health program,
how you heard that, but
from several middle school students.
that wasn't what my student learned.
I mean, I don't know if this has changed recently.
If
I
there
don't
was
know.
a change
What
in
grade?
curriculum, that would be something we would have had to have voted on, so.
I know that
That wasn't the experience that my daughter had, but I don't know what grade. My daughter's in
daughter's in
7th.
8th grade, and I heard from her
Oh.
friends that that they're teaching health as absence primarily.
I would be
Okay.
very
Sex ed,
interested
and
to
they're
Well,
know
talking
that.
about birth
That is
control.
primarily the way that you can prevent that.
So,
But there are other ways.
okay, hold on,
But-
just
and they
again,
should be taught the other way.
Again-
That's what I'm saying.
They are taught the other way.
okay, I think just as a reminder, this is topics for future meetings,
Yep.
not necessarily to discuss the issues, but.
I mean, I could
yeah, no,
contact
no.
Principal Hovey.
No,
or
no,
the
I think
health
it's.
teacher first.
No, I'm not saying it's not a valid conversation to have, it's just it's not part of this agenda, so.
Well, I just didn't know if it was something.
I think that the curriculum, I mean, we vote on the high school course catalog. I don't know if we vote on the middle school curriculum.
I'll get the answer and
Thank
send
you.
it to everybody.
Okay. Anything else?
Do we want at some point in time to tackle athletic fees?
Well, I think, isn't that something that we would talk about in finance first?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I think we should
Okay.
discuss it in finance first.
That's a typical part of the budget process, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Okay.
like how you use the pun, tackle. Hit it.
Smack upside the head.
Okay, any other topics for future meetings?
Today, let me tell you.
Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn
Michelle always does it first.
at 9:38.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, oh, David, quick to the trigger. All those in favor? All right, that is unanimous. We are adjourned.